whatever. Is the countdown not working for me?
Good evening and welcome. Good evening and welcome to the Position on Sports Talk Show post, live streaming on Facebook Live, Twitch, and our Position on Sports Talk Show YouTube channel. We are a sports talk show made for the fans, from the perspective of fans, presented by lifelong sports fans. We will provide our opinions and positions on the hottest topics in sports. I'm Edward Johnson, and tonight I'm joined by Big Reg.
What's going on, peoples? I'm doing good. Coming from a remote location. I appreciate you jumping in and running the show tonight, Ed, doing our thing. But as you say, let's talk sports. Let's get it.
There you go. Running the board, handling all the technical aspects of this situation tonight is J3. Welcome, brother.
What's happening? God bless. Let's get it in.
There you go. And always a joy and treat to be joined by a socially conscious brother named Sense. How you doing this evening, Sense?
Feeling good, feeling great. What's good, fellas? Let's talk some sports.
Good. Well, tonight I'm very excited. It's going to be a slight departure from our regular format we usually follow. You know, as oftentimes sports provide an escape from, the harsh realities of racial inequalities that many Black Americans and other minorities continue to face on a daily basis here. In commemoration of yesterday's 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre that destroyed the thriving Black community of Greenwald District, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and left several people dead, injured, and displaced, tonight we would like to have a discussion that explores responsibility, nepotism, and power in sports. In particular, how these three topics affect the African-American athletes that are in front of the cameras, the microphones, for all to see and judge. We also want to encourage our audience to send any comments or opinions that you may have pertaining to these extremely relevant topics that not only affect sports personalities and the athletes personally involved, but also the many communities and sports fans across this nation. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the responsibility of the Black media. In two recent incidences we have that are very dissimilar but similar, the recent spat between former NBA player Kwame Brown and various media personalities, and the criticism of tennis superstar Naomi Osaka's refusal to speak to the media at the French Open, and now we've found out that she's since withdrawn for mental health reasons, with her related to her ongoing battle with depression and anxiety, have brought a light to a deeper discussion on whether or not the Black media personalities, influencers, have a responsibility to avoid the cartoonish or unfounded characterizations of Black athletes that perpetuate centuries-old myth and portray Blacks in a less than favorable way. So this is the first topic of discussion. Let's get into it. Are Black media personalities, fellas, do you feel obligated to protect and shield Black athletes from the negative narratives of mainstream media that they continue to push on Black athletes? And let me give you an example. The first example I brought up is Brown. Now, Brown was the first high school basketball player ever to be drafted number one in the NBA draft, directly from high school. Well, recent events have led to him to be trending on his various social media outlets, mainstream sports outlets, and in fact, it's reached major news networks as far as um, this criticism that he's been facing from various people. Basically, he's been the butt of jokes, and he's been called a bust, both on the athletic courts. His family has been brought into this mess. And so I just want to ask, do you feel that major Black personalities, whether it's in regular entertainment, whether it's in the sports, do you think they have a responsibility to actually report facts and leave the fiction to other people?
Yeah, I mean, that's I don't know if it's an official one, but it's a journalistic type of code that you follow. Yeah, you go by facts. When it gets into the sensationalism, I think that's when you start to kind of veer off from what your core intent was. Like, and as it pertains to Brown, while it may be debated on whether or not he was a bust, we all can agree that his career didn't pan out the way that we would have expected a number one draft pick, to go. But when you start to pile on and, do little things like Kwame Brown, stuff like that, that's when it starts to get a bit too much, and then it gets more personal than it does as far as his play goes.
But let's look at the role of the sports reporter in general. When they first were coming up, way back in the beginning, they used to protect all the athletes. And of course, most of those athletes were white then. Mm-hmm. But negative stuff rarely got out because it was part of their job to help the leagues continue to grow and prosper. Somewhere, I don't know if it was the 70s or 80s, where journalism changed drastically. And it went from we're all developing this sport to, well, my job is just to cover it and I'm going to do what I want to. And it became, not all journalists, but some became more got you journalism and attacking journalism. And then with the proliferation of these different shows on the ESPNs and Fox Sports 1, especially these debate shows, you've gotten these personalities, some of them who used to be real journalists, who now become
shop
personas.
Journalists.
They're personas. They're not even, I don't believe they're what they even believe they are. But they know the more shock value I can put out there, the more clicks I can get, the more people who I can get to turn in. So the ratings go up. So it's all about money. Black journalists for the longest would always try to protect, especially the black athlete. I think there's a huge difference between reporting facts and actually doing research to go behind what you think are facts. And this shock journalism is going to. Because Sense just said something. It's not what you expect out of the number one pick. We're talking about Kwame Brown. If you read some background information on that, Kwame Brown signed, but some other people beside Kwame Brown, Jordan drafted him number one, never to keep him. Jordan didn't ever want him for the Wizards. He was going to trade him. And supposedly the owner, Abe Pollin, shot the trade down. So Jordan never wanted him. Mm-hmm. Here's a teenager who's coming in the NBA from a small hick Georgia school. And the only reason why he got into that school is because he could play basketball, or he wouldn't have been at school. Mm-hmm. Come from a severely low-income family who was homeless at sometimes. And now you're going to give this man tens of millions of dollars. He has nobody in his family has no idea how to handle his money. And then you put him in a situation where he's on a team that doesn't want him. And then you got the person who's going to draft you, is going to whip you into shape. We all saw the Jordan documentary. You saw what his mode of leadership was: degrade,
tough love, kind of
beat on you. And while that worked for Scottie Pippen, you also heard in that documentary most of Mike's teammates don't like him.
They wanted to fight him in practice.
So, Big Reg, you and Sense touched on a couple things that had me thinking. Big Reg, you said that historically, in sports, the media has always tried to protect the athlete, to shield the athlete from himself, people outside of the locker room, so to speak. But I think that I don't think it's a coincidence that protection has become less and less the more these particular sports franchises have started becoming integrated. I don't think that's a coincidence.
Good point.
Yeah. And I think that, now you have a flip where you take the NFL and you're talking about practically 80% and upwards of their players are African-American. The NBA, I'm sure, again, plus 80%, their players African-American. And so you have that. But here's the problem, and you can never forget this. One thing you have to really understand is that the only way these various people would be successful and placed in front of these ESPN, Fox News, etc. cameras, or some of these online forums is because who's consuming this? Someone has to be the consumer. Someone has to purchase this and accept this as acceptable behavior. Mm-hmm. And their main audience, they look like us.
Right.
They look like us. So we're actually supporting the mess that we see on these airwaves, on these online chats, on platforms like we have. And I believe that everything is perception. Everything is perception. Perception actually it's the lens in which we view reality,
right,
so to speak. So even if it's not true, it shapes it shapes not only our opinions or views on people, it shapes the society's views on people. So if what you see on TV or what's being reported, particularly if it's being reported by a person of color, and if they're reporting to the mainstream, they're not segregating who these broadcasts are going out to. These broadcasts are going out to everybody. And so as they're reaching everybody, the only thing they see, these images are creating perceptions. And then you have and then they say, okay, well, that's what they must be like. That's what a bus must look like. But if you really report, but if you have a responsibility to report facts. Okay, this man, again, using Kwame Brown as an example, he may have been drafted number one, but you have to look at the entirety of his career. You have to look at, okay, what factors what contributed to him, as you mentioned, Big Reg, what factors contributed to him not living up to the perceived expectations of a number one draft pick? Was he coached properly? Was he wanted? Was he encouraged? All these things play into this.
Yeah.
It's not just a joke. Explain the reason. I believe you need to explain the reason. Be responsible in what you're reporting.
Absolutely. And plus, I mean, going back to what you said, Ed, about this is somebody that Jordan, I'm talking about, was somebody that Kwame, I'm sure, looked up to. So to come to a team and for your idol to just say, first of all, I didn't want you on this team. And then I'm going to prove to you that I didn't want you on this team because I'm going to ride you into the ground. You got to, imagine what that does to somebody's mental state. It basically sets them up for failure going forward because it's like, man, my idol didn't even want me, on this squad. And, he pretty much perceived me as a bust and I'm being shipped from team to team to team. He was basically set up to fail. So it wasn't, all on him. And also, I wanted to touch on what you said about perception real quick, because it also seems like the media has gone from being responsible to now trying to create these narratives to, make a player be the villain or the hero or, favor one team or player than the other. And it's just gotten out of hand, in my opinion.
I just think
So
that.
basically,
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, J3.
I was just gonna say it's sad because, in my opinion, it just seems like we discriminate against ourselves. And of course, when you have individuals, again, he was drafted high, but he was never really given a chance to prove himself because of what you stated earlier. Because he was on a team that didn't want him, and then you had the number one player shooting him down. Keep in mind that he had been quiet for so many years, and he just said enough is enough. I mean,
Yeah.
it's sad that you have our own race bringing you down when he's not even on the court any longer. Now, I mean, again, he didn't get a chance, in my opinion, to prove himself, even though he did go from team to team. But still, there's no reason for you to bring them down like they are. And he just said enough is enough.
Yeah.
I just know that the list in all sports franchises of bust, not African American or long, and I mean or long.
Adam Morrison.
Adam Morrison.
Why do the franchises get off from not developing these players? Nobody ever blames the franchises for drafting these players,
Nope.
and they don't work out. If you look at the Wizards and look at the past 20 years of Wizards first round draft picks, you may have 3 that you could say panned out. Almost all the other ones failed.
Yeah.
The organizations did a horrible job bringing these kids in, developing them, and getting them to a point where they could be successful for the organization.
Poor player development.
But the organizations always get off it's the players' fault. It's the players' fault. And one of the things that people say, well, when you go pro, you signed up for that, so you got to be ready for that. That's not realistic.
These are like 18, 19-year-old kids.
Well, that's an interest.
No 18 or 19-year-old, especially coming from a situation like Kwame came from, where his family didn't have anything, is going to turn millions of dollars down when somebody says you're going to be a top 5 pick, possibly the number 1 pick in the country. Who would?
Right.
You go to college, so most people go to college so they can get a decent job, so they can earn enough to have a decent living.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can skip a step and get the money, hopefully you'll be able to keep it. But that's a whole nother subject I won't get into.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody came to me and wanted to give me $5 million a year to go do a job, and I'm going to get a guaranteed contract, you know what? I may tell myself I can do that job, but chances are I ain't ready for that $5 million a year, but I'm going to take it.
But we
We're gonna
always
try to
talk
figure
about
it out.
on this show. We always talk about on this show, Big Reg. You can't. Salaries don't make the person. Just because you have a particular salary doesn't necessarily
Absolutely.
mean that that salary fits who you are or where you are in life. But that's interesting to say. That's an interesting segue into this, and this is a far more serious problem issue that we're getting ready to delve into, and this concerns tennis superstar Naomi Osaka. Black sports media personality Rob Parker. We all know who Rob Parker is if you follow ESPN or Anytime. Well, he recently panned an article in Deadspin, and it was published literally an hour or two prior to Osaka's official withdrawal from the French Open. And he called out Osaka for showing up at the Open and would have preferred that she stay away if not talking to the media would affect her mental health. He went on to say that her claims was bogus and applauded the 4 Grand Slam tournaments that issued a fine and stern warning to Osaka for her behavior. Now, is this type of recklessness accepted from a black sports writer? And I say that understanding that if you know anything, if you followed Osaka's career for any amount of time, you understand that she has been dealing with mental health issues and anxiety as far as being out front of the cameras, not necessarily on the tennis court, but she actually has to speak since she first defeated Serena back in 2018 at the U.S. Open. And if you don't believe, if you can pull up the footage and see her, she's literally cowered behind her visor, and she's getting congratulated from Serena, which that whole situation was a mental health strain on her, period, because a lot of people vilified her for beating Serena in that turn.
Exactly. Yeah.
But so Naomi's all of a sudden perceived issue of not wanting to talk to media because she maybe had an alternative agenda is totally unfounded. And the only alternative agenda that could possibly be is how she was up front and foremost and speaking out against all the racial inequalities and violence that was plaguing our country last summer and last year. So what do you guys think about this? Let's talk about this. What do you think of the attack on Naomi?
First of all, I applaud her because I've suffered from mental health as well. And for her to step back and say that, you know what, I don't need this, I'm going to take a step back and get myself together. To me, I truly, truly believe she did the right thing. And for anybody who has any other comments about it, man, who are you? I mean, if she doesn't take care of herself, who's going to take care of her? So she did the right thing. And I'm happy that she did it.
Yeah, I agree. I don't even, well, as a side note, I don't even know why this dude, is constantly getting jobs, but that's another job before another story. I think it was very ignorant on his part to even comment on something as sensitive as mental health and to downgrade it as just someone having a diva moment. That's just stupid to me. Anyway, I definitely applaud her for what she's doing because we think, because you're getting millions of dollars and what we perceive as living a life of Riley, you shouldn't have anything to complain about. But they're human just the same. And I mean, imagine all the pressure that comes with after beating someone that you probably looked up to in Serena, then having all of this, the limelight put on you, cameras in your face, microphones in your face. It's a lot. I mean, you've seen it with Kevin Love. You've seen it with, other athletes who it got to them because it's a lot. And I mean, I applaud Naomi for saying, you know what, I'm going to just fall back on this. Y'all can have it. I'll see y'all on the next tournament. So, yeah, bravo.
I got 2 points for this. First of all, shame on the French Tennis Federation, the French Open tourney, Wimbledon, the U.S. Open in Australia for trying to strong arm a 22-year-old tennis player who told them before the tournament started, because of mental health, I don't feel comfortable doing this. If they had such a big problem with that, then they should have told her up front, well, if you're not going to speak, we don't want you to come. And just ended it that way. They said, okay, if you don't speak, we're going to fine. She's like, fine, I'm willing to pay the fines, and I hope you give that to mental health causes. And to question her of whether the validity of her, why she was doing this, is ludicrous. It's a medical issue. I know here in the United States, that's a HIPAA issue. What she had to do for her withdrawal and actually going into detail of what she was dealing with, she shouldn't have to deal with that. No. If that was a physical injury, they would have said she's got an injury, she can't play. So it was just Bush League about them. And then the fact that they were after her because she didn't want to talk to the press, but then they gave a news conference after she withdrew and didn't take any questions.
Here's the issue. Here's my problem with this. The problem is, first of all, when she first announced that, okay, I'm going to play, but like you said, I'm going to play, but I'm not talking to the media because of my mental health. She said that. She let everybody know. She let the Open know, and then she also let her social media follow. She let everybody know who was listening that I'm not going to talk to the press because of this. Now, mind you, it was still May when this was going on. What was May in our country? Mental health. Mental health month. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So this is how I'm relating this to our topic: Black sports media being responsible. You are responsible to protect and to report facts. If you've been into the sport game any amount of time, you know about Naomi's past. And even if you didn't, mental health is not anything to play with. I don't think Naomi or anybody for that matter, not even Kyrie, I don't think that they would actually say something to bring highlight to a disease that they may be suffering to get out of something. I just don't think. I think that's a stretch, and I think that's reckless to even believe that it would be anything but the truth. And I was just very, very disappointed that the firestorm that preceded her withdrawal was even there. And I'm offended by the fake support that has followed.
Yeah.
Because if you didn't support her prior to her withdrawal, why do you want to support her now?
Because it's popular.
You see what I'm saying? Because is it popular?
Oh yeah, because they're getting killed. They're getting killed for some of the comments they made. I think Steph Curry had the perfect adage. It's like it's a crying shame that a professional athlete has to make a decision on whether to continue to play their sport or protect their mental health. And the organizations say they're concerned about the athlete's well-being. But I mean, just the idiocy that they're going to go after her because she doesn't want to talk to the media, but yet they give a statement and don't take questions because they don't want to talk to the media. So we want you to do it, but we don't have to do it.
Right.
And a perfect illustration, point number 2, Coco Gauff, who's young American phenom tennis player who's playing in the French Open now. She had a press conference yesterday, and one of the idiotic questions she got asked was, you're compared a lot to Serena and Venus Williams. I guess that's because you're black.
Like, do we even?
Or maybe because you're American. And they don't see that as offensive. So that's the stuff.
No, man, it's like journalism has not. It's not journalism anymore. It's more TMZ. Like, oh, let me just ask you this question to get a rise out of you, or see what you're gonna say.
But this is the core. This is the part of our subject that bothers me. How is that question even allowed to exist? And then we say, okay, well, that's on French soil. That's a French Open problem. No, it's not a French Open problem because those broadcasts are being spread back to American households. So it's a societal problem. It's just not a French problem. It's not, oh, that's just the French being, French. That's not it. The problem is, what do we accept? We being the consumers of that particular content. So we're stuck between a hard stone and a rock, I believe, because if you think about it, we want to support our athletes. We want to support Coco. We want to support Naomi. We want to support Serena and Venus. We want them visible and successful within in that realm.
Yeah.
So if we say, okay, we refuse to believe that. If we take our dollars away from that, we take our eyes away from them performing. How does that benefit the athlete? So what do?
We suck it up and we we watch. Unfortunately, it's just like you said. It's just one of those catch-22 situations. But
I think you can still support an athlete, or even, in my opinion, and it could be totally wrong. I look at like the NFL situation. Dealing with the Kaepernick thing, a lot of people in the African American community and the white community decided they weren't going to watch football anymore. And I know that's the biggest driver in revenue. My personal opinion was I can still partake in watching it. It's on regular TV, whatever. I'm not going to spend any additional dollars of mine supporting organizations that I don't believe in anymore. So I won't go to an NFL game. I'm not going to spend money on a ticket, money on concessions, money on parking anymore. But that was my choice. I think you can support, especially these individual athletes like tennis athletes, you can support their causes individually. You can support their athletic wear if they're producer. I know like Nike came out with a strong statement supporting Naomi and all that. So I think there's ways around it where you don't take away all the viewership and all the money, because that just kills the sport. And I agree with you. So, but it's tough. It's tough. Some people would say it needs to be killed and then recreated.
Let's speak to the broader issue though, as far as these shows that encourage this type of journalism, like a First Take or First Things First. Maybe decreasing the viewership of those shows might, say, hey, we're not going to go for this type of, vilifying and denigrating of, athletes, especially black athletes. And you're going to have to kind of change your tune and, see what that does. It's just a thought.
All right.
I think people on those shows need to check the commentators when they're getting out of pocket. I think Molly Karen Rose checked Stephen A. today when he was talking about the mental health thing, and he was getting to that, get off my lawn, it's part of your responsibility, yada, 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 and trying to act like Naomi didn't give them a heads up about what she was dealing with, which is totally false.
That's false.
And on FS1, because I peruse the different shows, because we do a sports talk show. I can't believe I can't remember her name.
Joy Taylor.
Joy Taylor was on it. She was like, "There's absolutely no way that this should have ever been an issue." So if people go out there and say, "Nah, y'all wrong," and stop it, that changes the whole narrative.
But no one.
But Sin said it. It's all about viewership. I mean, they're trying to get as many people to watch this show as possible. So if they say something outlandish and it gets out, then it's going to make you want to see what they're going to say next.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
then they end up doing what Mama Marshall Carolyn said. Billie Jean King put out an original statement. Then she had to redo her statement because her original statement was, well, that's part of the job. Just because people did something a certain way for years and years and decades doesn't mean it was right. And it all definitely doesn't mean it was healthy. It was unhealthy then. It's just the people who were doing it couldn't stand up. So now athletes are put in a position where they're standing up for themselves and saying, we're not taking this crap anymore.
They're talking back. Yeah.
And I can take my $60 million that Naomi Osaka's made in the last year, and I can walk away if that's what y'all want.
I just think ultimately, as storytellers and image makers and platform creators, I just think that black media particularly have a responsibility to black athletes, particularly when they've forever been ostracized in society. So this brings us to another interesting issue that we always seem to face, and it seems like the NFL usually leads the pack on this particular subject, and that's nepotism. But understand that we're dealing with a private entity, the NFL. It's a private business, and nepotism is not illegal as far as a private business is concerned. Now, I know we have people that listen to this show or may know more about that than I do, but as far as I could tell, if you have your private business, you can hire who you want. I can hire my brother, I can hire my sister, I can hire my nieces, whoever. It's my business. So this is the NFL. The reason I bring this up, former quarterback Tim Tebow recently signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars and Urban Meyer. People across the sports universe have come to question nepotism that runs rampant in professional sports, but particularly the NFL, it seems. Tebow, we all know, is a close friend of Urban Meyer. He has not played professional football since the offseason of 2015 with the Philadelphia Eagles. And to add salt to the wound, Tebow is attempting this comeback, not as a quarterback, which he flamed out as, if depending, I'm not calling him a bust. I just said he flamed out. He beat Pittsburgh in the playoffs. So I can't say he's a bust. He's coming back as a tight end, which he hasn't played since his freshman year in high school. I believe he's 35 now, so you can do the math. How many years ago that? I wasn't really good at math. Anyway, do sports franchises, specifically the private corporation that is the NFL, have the right to provide playing opportunities to whomever they choose without considering the public outcry that may result in said player being provided that opportunity? Now, before you answer, remember, these are private corporations, but almost 99% of the stadiums that these players play in have been built primarily with public funds, except Rao John. That wasn't a public fund state, but they got great tax breaks. But anyway, do you think the public has a right to be upset over this? And also, do you think the teammates within the organization, particularly when you have certain athletes that can't even be employed anymore, much more qualified than him, sitting out there? What do you guys think about this nepotism in sports?
It's not going away. If you think it's bad for the actual athletes, look at the coaching ranks.
We're gonna get into that.
Mm-hmm. How many sons of ex-coaches running around? And heck, you can look at New England. Belichick's son is assistant defensive coordinator. There's a bunch of rosters where you look, right in the D.C. area. I know for a fact the coach has his daughter working in the front office doing something. So it's constant. It's not only in sports. That happens in private businesses. Mm-hmm. What I would tell you in sports, when you start bringing those people on the field, you do it at your own peril, because you can lose your whole locker room. If you start bringing in people that can't play, and once the players know they can't play, and if they end up making the 53-man roster, you got problems, because they're gonna say, "Oh, you're not really interested in winning."
Yeah, I think Urban Meyer is off to a very bad start as far with this move, because, as Big Red just said, it definitely affects the locker room, especially the black players who. I think even though you just drafted one, it would have been, it would have behooved you to get a solid maybe backup to him who could probably show him the way. That's currently unemployed right now, and Mr. Kaepernick. But, that's neither here nor there. But you chose to, give someone who just basically just came out of baseball. Like, you just going all over the place and just out of, oh, hey, I think I want to get back in football. And you know what? I think I want to play tight end. Mr. Meyer, because you have such a close relationship, can you give me a chance? And then for him to so easily get that chance, it's just, yeah.
But the question is,
we're talking about this. Oh, sorry.
Okay, go ahead, J3.
I was going to say, it's funny we're talking about this, because I was in a class today, and to be honest with you, it all boils down to white privilege. I mean, plain and simple. These individuals are fortunate enough to where they get the head coaching jobs, and they can pick whoever they want. They don't have to go against the grain. They don't have to go who should be on the field. No, they pick who they want in these positions, and that's because they have that privilege. And if we had that, I guarantee we would be the same way, but we don't. So all you can do is just wait for him to flame out, and somebody else to step in and do the job like he should be.
But do we okay, so I think the problem is this. The problem is because it's like this. Say you have a child, and you give that child, you support that child, right? But then when it comes to a decision, that child leaves you out of the equation and says, you know what? I can do this on my own, right? I don't need your opinion, even though you're supporting that child. So it's like with the NFL. The NFL, it's a private billionaires club. The average franchise, I believe, is worth $2.5 billion, give or take a bill, right? But these are on paper, yeah, they're private corporations. It's a private entity, but everything about it is it operates within the public arena. Whether it's the tax breaks, whether it's the publicly funded stadiums, whether it's the revenue that they get from private people coming into those stadiums, being taxed with those tickets, concessions. So the only thing that's private within the NFL is the franchise, but they operate as in a public forum. If you brought up Kaepernick, sense, well, you got Kaepernick. The Kaepernick fiasco started. Obviously, we know the history behind protesting police brutality, etc. But the public outcry, it was a public outcry where the players started to kneel. You had like a sea of owners was like, you're not kneeling, you're standing up. They tried to actually make it a rule. You're standing up. You have to be present for the anthem. That was later displaced. But it was an attempt. It was a public attempt, and it was a perception that this was a public forum, but it really wasn't. It's private.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's all about control. It was all about
control. It's all about
plain and simple.
But I do have mixed feelings about not the individual signing of Tim Tebow, but I do still feel a certain way that if I own something, I do have the right to hire who I want to hire, whether or not it's okay. And again, we talked about perception earlier. The perception is I'm hooking my boy up or whoever up. But the reality is, like it or not, and I don't like it, particularly in sports that I support, I don't like it because it's nepotism. It's clearly a violation. But I don't know if I necessarily have that right of an opinion.
Whoever has the goal makes the rules. Period.
Yeah. Sad but true.
Okay, well, this is
shout out real quick. Shout out to BJ. We see you. We see you on the chat. Shout out to Mama Marshall, and of course, Professor. I see you. I see you. Wish you was here to join in, but I see you. But I want to also give props to the Dr. Professor Harry Edwards, who talked about this mental health thing a long time ago. So just wanted to get that in before we move to the next segment.
Well, okay. Well, because we're talking about nepotism and you briefly mentioned it, should the NFL finally abandon the hiring practices associated with the Rooney Rule? Recently, former NFL player and coach Eugene Chung, who is of Asian descent from Maryland, admitted during an interview for an NFL job, his interviewer not only told him he wasn't really a minority, but also that he was not the right minority we are looking for. After 18 years of hiring cycles of the Rooney Rule, 5 current head coaches are held by by a minority in an NFL. Can we just end this charade now, guys?
Yeah. I think it's just smoke and mirrors at this point.
If it wasn't for the smoke and mirrors, we wouldn't have the 5.
Mm-hmm.
True.
That's the sad part about it. If it wasn't for the smoke and mirrors, we wouldn't have the 5. Because we would get the same retreads over and over again.
You're getting them anyway.
We might have 1 or 2 minority coaches. And I'm including Coach Rivera in that. I think there's a change going on, though, at the coaching level in some of these organizations. Not only are you seeing more minority coaches being hired, but you're seeing more female coaches being hired as well. So I think change is actually starting to happen, but some of these old owners are going to have to get out the way. And that's the issue. We've said this multiple times on this show. Until the ownership changes their viewpoint, you're going to continue going down the same road every 10 years, widen it better, because it's only them in those rooms. There's one minority owner in the NFL, majority owner, and he's
Arabic.
He's like
Pakistani.
yeah, he's from
Mhm.
I think he's Asian English.
And
Asian
why is
English.
that? And why is that? Because they won't even give you the opportunity to buy a team so you could be in the room.
Well, it's rumored out, and I'm sure you guys have heard this, that Jay-Z might be trying to purchase some stakes of the Washington team. So that might be a minority.
Big Red, you touched on it. You touched on the subject as far as we are starting to see a trickle down. You're starting to see a lot of, female executives actually and coaches being hired. A lot of minorities, particularly. Hey, Washington, it seems to be on the ball all of a sudden in the last few months. Now, whether that was a public relations thing or not, it doesn't matter. Their foot's in the door.
Tampa Bay, the champions.
Right, but it's a structural. It's a structural thing, and it ultimately comes down to the owner, because he writes the checks, he distributes the checks, and until they're comfortable with people of color in these positions, then because I look at the Rooney Rule is like it's the same thing we talked about as far as the Tebow situation, as far as nepotism is concerned, and you talked about coaches, Big Reg. It's all related. It's all related, and it's going to exist.
Yeah, I just again fear if you get rid of the Rooney Rule and don't continually try to tweak it and force people's hands, and basically they need to start out more of these owners that make these quick hires, like the Houston owner who hired a firm to help him with the search for the GM. The top two candidates for the GM job were both minorities. And instead of hiring one of them, they went outside of what they paid. Rumor is $500,000 to this research firm to give them an issue. To now, they hired the guy that they wanted.
Wow.
I just feel it could be better worked, the Rooney Rule, because it's like, don't just like kind of use it. Don't just be like kind of throwing us a bone with it, like, oh yeah, we're gonna, because it was just so many like viable candidates this past season that still didn't get jobs, and there's like, is it at this point just something? Okay, we're going to use the Rooney Rule, we're going to interview, but we already know who we have in mind. It's like, make it better and actually make it like something that we can believe in, rather than just smoke and mirrors, like I said.
All right, well, let's transition into the power of Black athletic voices. Black athletes have had a long history, particularly or increasingly starting in the 60s, speaking out and being on the forefront of social activism and policy direction here in the U.S. In many cases, these athletes have been assigned the task of being leaders without necessarily having the experience, education, or desire to perform such important work. Oftentimes, these athletes, they're thrust into political and social arenas based on their availability and notoriety, nothing more, just that come with their success in their respective sports. Do you feel that Black athletes should remove themselves from the political and social arena if not thoroughly versed in a specific area? The famous thing we often hear late was just shut up and dribble, and that was from LeBron James. He was having an interview with Kerry Champion, and KD was with them, and he voiced his opinion against a major political figure here in the U.S. And one of the political commentators was like, I don't want to take advice basically from, someone paid $100 million to bounce a basketball. So anyway, how do you feel about Black athletes and their role as far as speaking out on racial inequalities here in America. They're athletes after all.
I love it because, I mean, how else would this be brought to light if athletes didn't speak up about it? You know, for the longest time, you know, not for the longest time, because you did have some athletes that, you know, spoke out, but it was, you know, more so the few than the majority. But now everybody's speaking out about it. You know, they're making the NFL, NBA more aware of it, and in turn, you know, the NBA is doing what they, you know, can do to bring it to the forefront. NFL still has some work, but they also are trying, you know, doing the same thing. So yeah, I mean, keep it going, because, you know, you don't, if we don't say, if we remain silent, then we, you know, are compliant.
Man, listen, we all got a voice and we all should be heard. Whether you're bouncing a basketball or whether you're kicking a soccer ball or hitting a tennis racket, everyone has experiences. Everyone has dealt with racism and discrimination. You have a platform to use it. You should not be silent just because of the fact that you play a sport. Again, we've all gone through experiences. Let it be known. And as a matter of fact, because you're a sports figure, you're gonna have more individuals listening to you because of the fact that you're in a position where you can bring information to people who may not have heard it from a different person or another person.
I believe no athlete should be required or expected to speak out on any subject. If they desire to, they should feel free to speak out and share their truth and their reality about the situation. And that's all most of us are doing anyway. Even the speaking heads that are on TV, they're just giving it from their perspective, as you said earlier. They're shaping the narrative. So why not? I think it's great that athletes are getting back more to what was going on in the 60s and 70s, where they are going back to being members of their communities. And while it may not directly affect them on the daily, they're speaking up for the communities where they come from.
So where do these terms ungrateful, unnecessary, uninformed, unpatriotic, and we've talked about athletes, several athletes as far, okay, let's go down. Unpatriotic, Kaepernick, maybe even Ali. Ungrateful,
LeBron.
Right? Ungrateful. LeBron coming up from a single mom and bringing it, rising up above poverty. Unnecessary. You have uninformed. Where do these terms originate from? And a lot of times these terms originate from within our community. Mm-hmm. Like, oh wow, if I was making that much money, I would just shut up and just be happy that I have mine. Where does this come from?
Again, you got to understand that just because you play a sport, it doesn't mean that you actually have to speak or not speak. For the ones that do speak and are allowed to speak, I think that is great. But don't think for a second that they don't respect the position that they're in. And then when you talk about kneeling and you're talking about the flag, when was the last time you saw a flag that represented you? Because the red, white, and blue is definitely not for us. Mm-mm. Don't get it twisted. That flag is not for us. So if a player decides that they don't want to represent that flag, I don't have no problem with it. And I'm a veteran. And I'm going to tell you right now.
Can I answer your question directly?
Yes.
Part of it came out of fear. Let's not act like the 60s aren't just 5 decades ago, where we were actually dealing with trying to get some basic rights as black people and minorities to be treated just human. So there are a group of people who still, especially older people, who still think, don't rock the boat. You're in positions that we never could have thought of. Just go in there, make as much as you want, get as high as you can, hopefully bring somebody along and maybe bring some of that money back to your community. That was fear-based because we never had it before. I understand some of that. And I'm sure if you've ever went for a job position or something like that, somebody in your family probably told you something that when you look back, you didn't like them saying it. Most of it was out of fear. The other part is out of jealousy. Like you said, if I was making $10 million a year, I'd just be happy and just shut up. Yeah, until you got the $10 million a year and realized that there was also some power with that $10 million a year, that you don't just have to take anything that somebody says. And then once people realize that they have some strength and power, they're going to do some of the same things. So I'm proud of these athletes. Stand up, don't take it anymore.
You know the saying, with great power comes great responsibility? It rings true.
Move the world forward. Just because it used to be doesn't make it right. I say it again.
I just think there's a difference between being critical and then being objective. You can be objective. I would prefer to be objective about a situation, because it removes the chance of biases popping up. If you're just truly objective, being objective doesn't always give you what you want.
True. Oh, case in point. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But it doesn't always give you what you want, but it's usually a balanced approach as far as this being critical of something without having an alternate solution to it.
Yeah.
You know? So what were you saying, Sense?
I was going to say real quick, you know, as far as the being objective part, yeah, be objective. Don't get to a point where it's nitpicky. Case in point with the whole LeBron James, like when Stephen A. Smith was, I feel, being nitpicky, talking about, well, LeBron speaks on all these social issues, but he doesn't speak on the vaccine. Well, that's his choice. He doesn't want to disclose whether or not he's going to get the vaccine, whether or not he's received it. That's his business, and you should leave it alone. But to be nitpicky like that, well, he does all this up, that pretty much speaks to your
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why come for him? He does so much other things within his. He builds schools, and etc. All right. So let's move on. Let's talk about since we are in the midst of getting into the nitty gritty of the NBA playoffs. Anything? Let's talk about. We got some Sunday scores. We got the Monday games, which was yesterday. Saturday we had Utah. Excuse me. We had Portland tied the series up with Denver. Any surprise there?
I know it was going to be a dogfight. Like, you know, they're both very good teams. They both have some, you know, snipers, some shooters on their squad. I thought Denver actually had the advantage because you have a versatile big and Jokic. But, you know, I expected it to be what it is right now.
I think Denver might be in trouble, man. I think they're missing Jamal. I think what happened to their offense in that game?
Yeah.
Michael Porter should be.
I think they finally figured out. I mean, I'm not saying you can stop the Joker.
How to slow him down a little bit.
Yeah, but if they just slow him down and they know he's the offense, he's the facilitator, he's the main offensive threat. And I think they've kind of figured out, because they went small. If you watch the game, they went small, except for their center, that big, whatever his name escapes me.
Nurkic.
Yeah, they went. But anyway, I just think that Jamal Murray injury is really going to start creeping up now, and it's 2-2. Yeah, we'll see about that.
I think that's the theme of this whole NBA postseason now.
Injury.
Yes.
Denver would be a different team with Jamal Murray. Right now, the Lakers, Sensis squad. AD goes down again. And I'm sorry, with a groin and a big man, if he can come back and play Game 6 and Game 7, he's not going to be the same. That's going to hurt their chances.
I blame him.
Philadelphia. Embiid went down with a knee. Big man with a knee. That's a problem.
And if you think about Philadelphia and Lakers, as far as Embiid and Davis, it's not like they just got hurt this year. They've had a long history of getting hurt.
Yeah. This short offseason didn't help. That's why I blame Adam Silver. It's the short offseason.
You got Milwaukee with DiVincenzo.
Yeah.
He was in number 3, number 4 player, but you take him off that team, that messes up their whole rotation.
But we got to give Milwaukee some credit for a revenge. They swept the Heat. I picked the Heat to go to the finals before the season started. I'm out of it, so I have no horse in the race now. But
that's my team.
Milwaukee dismantled Miami.
Shout out to Professor because he picked.
But here's the issue. It wasn't Giannis. It wasn't the Greek Freak necessarily. All of a sudden, he has a supporting cast. Where'd they come from, guys?
They finally stepped up.
Yeah,
because Middleton
aggressive in free agency.
Yeah.
In the other action this past weekend, the Knicks, they seem to be Broadway lights. I think they're starting to turn those lights out on Broadway.
Trae Young putting on a show.
Trae Young is
Ice Trae's putting on a show. He took Broadway by storm and then showed out in Atlanta.
Oh yeah.
I thought Thibodeau was this defensive guru. I thought he was.
You know, can y'all help me put up flyers later on about find out where Julius Randle is, because he ain't been showing up.
He hasn't. Now I will say he tried to play a little ball. He played a little ball the other night. He tried. You're right. For the most part, he hasn't been the comeback player of the year that they say.
Right.
He is.
The Knicks are a work in progress. They still shocked that they're there. So don't get too excited. They still a work in progress.
This was a huge achievement for them being in the playoffs.
Absolutely.
Everything's lining up for Brooklyn. Everything's lining up for Brooklyn in the East.
I wonder why.
KD had 42 points. Kyrie 39. The Beard 23, 18 assists. Who's going to slow the big three down?
I was hoping Philly before Embiid got injured, but now maybe Milwaukee. There might be some hope. Maybe Giannis finally gets that.
That's what the next round is looking like. Yeah. We're going to get it early on as far as the NBA playoffs are concerned. Since I wanted to try to keep this last. I wasn't going to mention it. But can the Lakers win without Anthony Davis? It's 2-2 right now.
It would take a heroic Superman-like effort from Mr. James. I feel he has it in him, but he needs some other people to come along for that ride. I need Kuzma to figure out what the hell he wants to do. Does he want to be a player? Does he want to sit on the sidelines and look pretty? I need you to be aggressive, Kuzma. I need Schroeder to not be all
8 points.
Schroeder. Yeah, with his, he turns the ball over too much. I need him to kind of, slow it down and be an actual point guard. Trez, like Vogel, I need you to insert Trez. This is the perfect matchup because Crowder to me is a bit passive and Trez would just mop the floor with him as far as rebounds and putbacks. LeBron needs help.
Well, what about your off-season acquisition of Drummond? Not off-season, in-season. What's Andre doing? He's getting destroyed by Ayton.
Which is it doesn't make sense because maybe he's living up to his nickname, the Big Penguin, but it's I need him to be more aggressive too because it's not panning out right now. But LeBron has been known to make everybody on his team better, and LeBron has never lost a first round series, and I don't think he's going to go out like that. He's going to basically try to kill himself on that floor to make sure he doesn't get knocked out the first round.
And I think that'll be the problem. I think they'll win the first round. He'll figure out a way to win too, but he's going to expend so much energy that they won't be able to get past the next round.
Don't bet against LeBron James. Never bet against LeBron James.
And can we finally give the number one ranked team in the NBA all season some credit? The Utah Jazz just keep doing what they're doing. They got my man back off an injury, and they just putting it on people now.
Mm-hmm.
They've been doing it all year. They've been doing it all year. It ain't no secret.
Yeah, but
Utah was good. Utah's been steadily getting better and better and better and better the last 2 or 3 years anyway. Mm-hmm. And I still think it was a good decision for them to sacrifice the first game against the Grizzlies I just think that they made the Coach Quinn made the right decision to set Spider down, and you're seeing the results of that now. Shout out to the Wizards. I'm glad they won a game.
Real quick, I'm sorry, real quick. J3, we haven't said anything about your Clippers. They look like they
You know what? It's not even worth mentioning because I don't think they won it. I mean, it's just apparently they just don't have the drive to get to the playoffs and produce. So I wasn't even going to say
they mounted it up now.
Yeah, but Dante, my boy's hurt.
Lucas say his neck is feeling a lot better. So we're going to see what they do now. Because Luka was giving them boys the blues every
the first
one
two games. The first
every
two games.
one of them. Yeah. Even the third game, he had 30 and a bunch. He just couldn't give him 40 or 50. So, and why are we shouting out people? John Morant, oh my, these young fellas, these young fellas are stepping up strong.
God's the future.
You talk
Ja
about
he just needs some help.
Ja, Trey, and then Donovan only like 25.
Luka only 22.
So it's like and we got to give him a man from the Celtics who dropped 50 and 40.
Oh, Tatum.
Jason Tatum.
I'm so mad we didn't draft him.
He just ain't got no help.
Lonzo Ball, and we didn't get Tatum.
He just doesn't have any help.
I got to give a mea culpa before we get out of here. I was wrong when I said Tatum was just a better scorer and not the lead dog. I was wrong. He proved he can be the lead dog as well.
Can Doncic be the lead dog?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
I give him props. I said I was wrong.
Baby Bird. That's Baby Bird.
Oh, man. I think he's more athletic than he's more athletic than Bird. I'm not calling him Bird yet. All right. So anything, what is everybody looking forward to this week? Is any sports that you're looking forward to? Oh. Devin Haney won his fight this past weekend. I don't know. I don't know if he looked ready for Lopez just yet. Because I think he was hurt for the first time in his career. Wait, Big Red, did you see the fight?
Unfortunately, I was not able to see it. I'm going to catch it. I got a DVR at home. But
all right, I'll keep my mouth shut. Call me after the text me about the ninth round.
Okay.
8th, 9th round. You tell me what you think.
Haney's problem is he hasn't developed his man strength yet. So as he gets up with as he's moved up in weight and getting up with these older fighters, he can outbox almost all of them, but he can't hurt them. And if you can't hurt them, and they can hurt you, that's a problem.
Is he still on the money team? Because he should have a great teacher in Floyd.
Now, Devin Haney was.
I don't think he's with Floyd.
I thought
that's the kid from Baltimore.
From Baltimore, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I thought Haney was with Mayweather too.
No. You're thinking of
Broner.
No, the kid from Newark, Stevenson.
Okay.
Yeah, he's not under Floyd, but Floyd is one of his mentors.
Okay.
Outside of it, yeah.
Okay, well, J3, what are you looking forward to this week? What you got? What's your final post?
My final post is I just want to say congratulations to all the graduates, whether it's high school or college. Congratulations, hats off to you, and keep moving forward.
Brother Sense.
I just want to go back to where we began with just the 100-year anniversary of the Tulsa riots. There was a special on CNN produced by LeBron James and Russell Westbrook that details that. I DVR'd it. They might have it on demand, so if you have some free time, definitely go check it out.
Big Reg.
Yeah, in light of the anniversary of this massacre, that wasn't the only massacre. There were numerous massacres of minority communities across this country, including, let's get real, the original massacre when they landed on this country and moved the Native Americans out. So it's not nothing new. What I hope that we get to a point where people are willing to not whitewash history, and we continue to shed lights on these atrocities that have happened right here in this country by these people, and the people who have profited from these atrocities need to be held responsible. That it wasn't me, it was my great grandfather. Yeah, but your great grandfather started businesses because of that, and your family still runs these businesses, so that money is directly linked to that. So I applaud people for bringing to light these things that were used to be kept in great grandma's diary, to be passed down to generation to generation, so one day it could be told. Let's tell it all. Put it all out there.
Yeah.
And I would like to just say thank you guys for, everybody for tuning in and putting up with this this conversation about sports and social issues and race, because we can never escape the fact that sports is part of society, and oftentimes society bleeds into forces us to talk and think about important subjects. And I think that we brought up some very, very interesting things tonight. And I thank you for being patient with us and listening and hopefully chiming in as well. So thank you. Appreciate that. And again, continues to be safe. But thank you for tuning in and listening and participating with us this evening on subjects that, although is sports centered, like I said, really affect all of us, whether we are fanatics or just casual observers of a particular sporting event or player. We definitely appreciate your time and the opportunity to share our positions on sports with you. Please tune in next Tuesday for our next live show at 7 p.m. You can also download this show and previous shows via Facebook or YouTube and listen to our shows on your favorite podcast platform. Please subscribe, follow, and like all your favorite sources. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Position on Sports and Twitter at Positions on SPO1. That's at Positions on SPO1. We would greatly appreciate if you would tell your friends, family, and social media contacts about our show. Have a great week and evening. This has been the Positions on Sports Talk Show post. Have a good night.
See you.
Appreciate you stepping up again, Ed. You the man.
Good show.
Thanks, guys.